Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar on Better Sleep for Spring. My name's Alyson O'Brien. I'm the Head of Service here at Sleep Action, formerly Sleep Scotland. Some of you might know us by that name. The team in the background, I've got Helen and Callum are here to support me today. We're expecting quite a few of you, so they'll be letting people in the background and also keeping an eye on the chat. Just a reminder, as has been put in the chat, the session's being recorded. The idea is that we'll have just the slides. Really, it's not to have you on the screen. But if you are concerned about your face appearing anywhere, if you're asking questions, please do switch off your camera. Just for a bit of housekeeping to get us started. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you do have any questions through the hour, it'd be great if you could just pop those in the chat, and we'll try and keep on top of those. It's probably the easiest thing to do. And just to avoid too many distractions, if you could keep yourself on mute unless you are you have been invited to ask a question, because otherwise there's lots of background noise and it just get a little bit distracting for everybody. And as I said, we will be recording. In fact, it's recording now. We are recording, so just to make you all aware of that. So I've got quite a few things to get through, and we have only got an hour, so I am going to get started, and anybody else who's joining us will join us as we go. The recording will be made available for everybody after the session, so if you have to leave early, or you missed something and you wanted to listen to it again, that will be there. We won't be sending out the slides. It will just be the recording. That's what's going to be available for you. So the first thing I'd like to do is have you all have a wee think about how you feel when you don't get enough sleep. And if you could just pop in the chat how things are for you if you don't get enough sleep. If that's one day, if that's multiple days, how does it feel for you? Run down, yeah. Anything else? Can't concentrate, have a sore head, feel hungry, yeah, that's a really common one. Crabbit, fuzzy brain, no patience, unmotivated, yeah, grumpy, change in emotions. Brain fog, yeah, that could be a really common one. Craving sugar, eating junk food, sometimes don't sleep well the next night, yeah. Ironically, poor sleep can mean that you then have poor sleep again the next night. Can feel a bit sluggish, jet lagged. Brilliant, all really good stuff. Yeah, that's fantastic. So the things I have here, yeah, as people have said, feel a bit worn out, can affect your energy and your motivation, can make it really hard to concentrate. You're actually more likely to make mistakes if you're sleeping, not sleeping very well. You can be short-tempered, you could have less patience, grumpy, if somebody mentioned. Our emotions can be less controllable when we are sleep deprived. So I know I myself can get quite tearful actually if I'm not sleeping very well, more likely to get a bit teary, even when I'm desperately trying not to. It can be harder to self-regulate, so this can be important for yourself and the people that you're working with. Actually, it can be more difficult to have that that focus and that ability to be able to control your emotions and how you behave when you are not sleeping very well. Somebody mentioned their mood. It can definitely affect our mood. It can make us more anxious, and it can make us more stressed, and the stress that we have then impacts on our sleep, which, as somebody mentioned, means it can be more difficult to sleep then the next night. And a few people said it can make you more hungry, you can crave sugar, you can crave caffeine, and actually that in itself could be a little bit detrimental for your well-being. But why is sleep so important? So there's some essential functions that occur during sleep. These include restoration and recharge. So when we are sleeping, our bodies and our brains are restoring. We are getting ready for the next day. We release, all of us, children, adults alike, release growth hormones during sleep. Obviously for children, it's really important for growth and development. For us adults, it's more important for renewal of cells. So if you've had an injury, it might get cell renewal will help repair and renew those cells so then you actually can get better. If you're not feeling very well, that's when a lot of that growth hormone can help. Maintain our immune system and clearing out toxins, especially this time of year. We're all coming down with coughs, colds, all kinds of other things. And actually sleeping better can mean that we don't catch as many things, but also that when we do, that they don't last as long. And it's really important for learning and memory consolidation. So the thing I was wanting to focus on today for the spring is actually a lot of us at the start of the year would have made some New Year's resolutions. And those New Year's resolutions are designed to often to help our health and well-being, make us feel better. So what I'd like you to do is, if you feel happy to share, did you make any New Year's resolutions? What were they? And are you still keeping them? So I know I was very much focused on, I wanted to get a little bit fitter, improve my fitness for the new year, exercise more. So we've got another one, exercise more, lose weight, real common one, be more active and improve fitness, lose weight, still attending Slimming World. Yeah, start running. That's a good one to have. Difficult one to start in the winter. So good on you for making that your resolution. Absolutely. Anyone else want to volunteer? No, that's good. There's some good ones. Daily yoga. Oh, that's a nice one. Nice, relaxing one. Eat more healthily. Absolutely. So I've just got an example here of the Forbes Health have the top New Year's resolutions for 2024. And some of these are things that people have already mentioned. And the areas I'm going to focus on when we're looking at our better sleep for the spring are improved fitness, losing weight and improving diet, improving our mental health. We've got stopping smoking and drinking less alcohol. So that can be part of the improving our diet, eating better, generally feeling better, and also performing better at work. So this could be helpful for yourselves. It could be helpful for the people that you're working with. They themselves might have made resolutions and they may be struggling to keep them. And actually, how can sleep impact on these resolutions, but also how can these resolutions impact on our sleep? So what's quite useful to know is actually the majority of people will be able to keep those resolutions for 2 to 3 months. So we're kind of at the point of resolutions are starting to break off. But if we're wanting to have longer term better sleep and improve our health and well-being, so we're more like the 1%, 2% to make it to 10, 11, 12 months, what are the kind of things we need to be aware of? So the first one I'm going to look at is improved fitness. This is obviously a resolution for many people. One thing that can mean that people give up on this aspect of their health and well-being is that our motivation can take a hit. Now, there's partly a lot of the time we make this resolution on the 1st of January and then it rains for a month afterwards, or it's cold, especially if it's icy out and the thing you want to do is go for a run. Actually, you don't want to then hurt yourself by going out for a run. But also, when you do exercise, can help or hinder your motivation. So I've got a short video about the body clock. So those of you who've done training with us before know all about your body clock, but your body clock is essentially an internal process that tells us when to expect certain things. So in the morning, if you wake up hungry, your body clock is used to, well, I eat your meal in the morning. When it gets to your usual bedtime and you feel sleepy, your body clock knows, well, about this time of day, I go to sleep, so I should feel sleepy. But actually, our own body clocks can be quite different. And when we are at our best for the day will be different depending on different people. So I'm just going to, Helen, jump in if my sound doesn't work, but hopefully I've got it shared properly.
Our body clock, also known as the circadian rhythm, runs on more or less a 24-hour cycle. When working properly, our body clock, shown here in red, runs in partnership with our sleep pressure in blue, which means our sleep pressure is highest at the point our body expects us to sleep. Top tips to build sleep pressure. 1. Get up at the same time each day. 2. Be active and get plenty of exercise. 3. Avoid napping during the day. What can impact on our body clock? 1. Sight keepers. We use environmental agents or events to provide the stimulus for setting or resetting our body clocks. The main Zeitgeber is light. Our body is designed to expect it to be light and bright during the day when we are awake, and dark and calm when we are asleep. Other Zeitgebers include body temperature, how often and what time we eat during the day, and timing of physical activity. 2. Hormones. The hormones cortisol and melatonin also impact on our body clock. Cortisol is made in the adrenal gland and inhibits sleep. It is produced in response to stress. Cardio exercise, sugar and caffeine, and even sleep deprivation are all stressors that contribute to the production of cortisol. Melatonin is a naturally occurring hormone that promotes sleep. It does not actually make you fall asleep. Produced in the pineal gland, production is triggered by changes in the light. As it gets dark, receptors in the eye send a signal to our brain to produce melatonin. If we look at this graph, we can see that we get a big burst of cortisol in the morning, shown by the red line, and then we will have a bit of a dip in the mid-afternoon. A lot of people will recognise this as their post-lunch slump. It's actually perfectly natural for us all to feel more lethargic around this time. Ideally at this time we wouldn't grab a caffeinated drink or a high sugar snack. What we should do is go for a walk or do something active to help us get through this slump. We will then generally hit a cortisol peak later on in the early evening, sometimes called a second wind, before ideally our cortisol levels come down nice and low, so our melatonin levels, shown in green, which have been relatively stable throughout the day, can peak around bedtime, and then we can naturally fall asleep fairly easily. If we miss this peak, it doesn't mean we can't fall asleep, but being in bed ready for sleep at this point will make it easier. Understanding how our natural body clock is affected by our behaviour is important when dealing with a sleep issue. Keeping a regular routine, getting the right balance of hormones during the day, and building sleep pressure can dramatically improve your ability to get to and stay asleep come bedtime.
So I'll ask you all to please ignore that we haven't changed the name on that video yet, but I will. So that's just a little bit to better understand the body clock. That's a very, very quick snapshot of how sleep works. And actually what can be really useful for you and the people that you're working with is to work out, are you a morning lark? Are you a night owl? Or are you actually neither? So while our body clock naturally sits within that 24-hour period, this can actually make it a difference to when we are productive. So I know I myself, I'm more of a morning person. This is probably the peak of when I'm most productive. I tend to start work earlier because I know that I'm better in the morning. I tend to try and have my meetings in the morning because I'm generally a bit more productive at those times. Whereas I have other colleagues who they would rather start later on in the day because the afternoons are generally when they would be more on fire with these things. So naturally, this will also affect when we have the most energy to do things. So if you're trying to improve your fitness, or you're working with someone who's trying to get more motivated to get up and get moving, actually knowing, are you better in the morning or are you better later on in the day, will help them decide, well, actually, if I'm more of an afternoon person, there's no point me saying, well, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and go for a run, because they're not going to be motivated to do that. They're very quickly going to stop doing that regular part of their routine because it doesn't suit their body clock. If they know they're an afternoon person, saying, well, actually, I'll go for my run in the afternoon, they're more likely to be able to actually go for that run and keep up that as part of their regular every day. How you work that out is thinking about, well, if you didn't have to go to work, you didn't have to get up in the morning, when would you naturally wake up? Are there certain times that you know, actually, I know that I'm better to do meetings at these times. I know that I'm better to focus on something I really need to concentrate on at these times. And that can help you work out. Some people are very extreme one way or the other, and some people are a little bit more in the middle. But having a wee think about that, maybe talk it through with somebody else. Well, I know that this works for me and I know this works for me. That can help if you're looking at your fitness journey, trying to get yourself a bit fitter, getting up and moving. And hopefully being fitter, having a bit more activity during the day will also then help you sleep better come nighttime. So the next one we were going to look at is improving diet. So a few people talked about losing weight. It's not necessarily just about losing weight, but I know a lot of people do want to eat a bit more healthily. And obviously eating healthily can be really beneficial for our sleep. Being able to cut back on things like sugar and caffeine means that we're more likely to be able to get to sleep, be able to stay asleep. And eating healthier can also help with some of the other areas like fitness. You're more likely to feel energetic and ready to go for a run if you've eaten a little bit more healthily than if you've maybe been eating junk food. However, sleeping poorly can really affect our ability to stay motivated when it comes to improving our diet. The reason for this is there's a couple of hormones that affect how we eat, and they affect the way that we manage hunger. So we have one that's called ghrelin, which tells our brain that we're hungry. And the other one is leptin, which tells our brain when we're full. Fairly simple. When they're working in balance, you eat your meal, you get to the point where you've had enough, your brain sends that signal to the brain, right, time to release leptin, we've had enough to eat. But unfortunately, when we're sleep deprived, we produce too little leptin and too much ghrelin. So you feel more hungry. Somebody mentioned that as one of the things that they notice when they're not sleeping well. You feel more hungry, so then you end up eating more than maybe you would normally do because you're sleep deprived, so your brain isn't releasing those hormones. It isn't telling your brain that you're full. We're also more likely to reach for those fast-acting carbs with lots of sugar. You know, if you haven't slept very well and you're like, right, I'm going to come down this morning and I'm going to have a nice bowl of porridge and that's going to get me going for the day. There's some slow release carbs in there. It's really, really good for me. Low fat, really healthy. Oh, but actually there's pastries in the cupboard and I'm just going to put a spoon of sugar in my coffee because I'm so tired. That's going to keep me going. So actually it's the two areas that you need to be aware of. We've got the hormones that aren't helping us, but also we kind of feel the need for these fast-acting carbs, lots of sugar, lots of caffeine to help us get through the day. And that will definitely have an impact on your ability to manage that improved diet, be able to make those healthy choices. So it's worth being aware that by improving your sleep, hopefully you'll be able to see that it is easier for you to find that motivation. People often do kick themselves when they kind of go, oh, you know, I haven't been able to eat very healthily all week. And then if you ask them, well, how have you been sleeping? Oh, terribly, because something's been happening, or actually I generally don't sleep very well. Well, actually understanding that in itself is probably affecting your motivation. The next one from that list was improving our mental health. This is a big one for me. I'm a big fan of people being aware of how sleep can impact on our mental health, because actually positive mental health can absolutely affect everything else. If you're not feeling mentally very well and you want to improve your diet and your fitness, well, you're not really going to have that motivation because you don't feel happy, you don't feel well in yourself. And our mental health and our mood is very, very closely linked with sleep deprivation. So when we're not sleeping very well, it affects the parts of our brain where our emotions are rooted. So positive memories generally are stored in the hippocampus, and this is actually quite significantly affected by sleep deprivation. However, our negative and neutral memories tend to be stored in the amygdala, which is a different part of the brain, and this is not affected. And essentially what this means is our brain stores the negative and neutral things that have happened during the day, but it doesn't store the positive things as well. So over time, if you're not sleeping very well, you can start to think that only negative things are happening because your brain physically cannot retain those positive memories as well. I find this a really useful thing to talk about, particularly with teenagers that I work with, to kind of say, you know, you've been saying you've been feeling a bit down, you've not been feeling yourself recently. Could this be because you're not sleeping very well and actually your brain is not able to store those memories in a positive way to help you feel good about your day, good about yourself? The other thing to be aware of is chronic sleep deprivation. There's been a lot of research that says that it can actually lead to mental health issues like depression, and also a number of mental health issues have sleep issues as a symptom. So if you're working with people who do have mental health issues and they say, oh, I really sleep quite poorly, that is quite common. You know, it's not unusual because unfortunately, that's just the way that these mental health issues work. Is one of the first things it will do will start to affect their ability to fall asleep, to stay asleep. And many people with mental health issues do tend to oversleep. So if they maybe can't get to sleep at the start of the night, they'll then finally get to sleep and they'll stay asleep, and they'll stay asleep much longer than they would do, which means that they end up sleeping at the wrong time. So it can affect their body clock, It also can affect their ability to do things like if they have got this idea of, well, I'm going to get up and I'm going to be more active because I know it's really good for my mental health, but then they end up sleeping till 11 a.m. and then they have to eat and then maybe have other things they need to get done. And then by the time it gets to the point that they could go and do that piece of exercise, they've missed the time that they might have wanted to do it. So it ends up being a bit of a Venn diagram of all of these different things can accumulate to affect your mental health, and being able to get that sleep at the right time is helpful. So getting better sleep can in the long term help support positive mental health. Now, I'm not saying that sleeping well will mean that mental health issues will disappear, because I mean, sleep's pretty brilliant, but it's not the magic cure for everything. But definitely there can be, for those people that you're working with, it could be really positive. And for yourselves, if you are struggling with your mental health, if you can find a way to get better sleep, this can help support you. The next one that we saw on that list was about smoking and drinking. So I'm not just going to talk about smoking and drinking. I'm kind of going to talk about a number of things that we consume that can affect our sleep. And if we think about when and how we're consuming them, that could actually make an impact on being able to sleep better. So I'm going to split them into two. So first of all, we've got our stimulants. So you are looking at your nicotine, caffeine, sugar, prescription medication. There'll be other drugs that people take that are stimulants. And essentially what these do is increase our alertness and make it more difficult to fall asleep. So often people who are smoking don't realize that the nicotine in itself is a stimulant. And then they go, oh, well, I have a cigarette before I go to bed. And then I lie awake. And they don't realize that that's the thing that's keeping them awake. Caffeine is a big one. So a lot of people will have a cup of coffee, as was said in that video, in the afternoon to get them through their cortisol slump. Depending on the individual, we all take slightly different amounts of time to process caffeine, but it can take up to 10 hours. So if you're having a cup of coffee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you want to go to sleep at 10, but you're somebody who does take that long to process that caffeine, that could be something that's making it more difficult to get to sleep. So thinking about if you're taking these things, when you're taking them, that could definitely affect your ability to get to sleep. So when we talk about smoking, often a lot of the times the recommendation is giving up, and that was one of the New Year's resolutions, was giving up smoking, and that's always good, but it does take time to get over the dependency on nicotine. So actually the effects on sleep may continue even after, the person, if you yourself or the person you're working with has given up smoking. So they might say, oh yeah, I gave up smoking last week and I'm still not sleeping very well. Yeah, it can take a little bit of time. So again, it's not just right, I've stopped smoking, therefore it's done. It could take a little while to get over that. The other group that I was going to talk about are called depressants. So alcohol is a big one, and there are some prescription medications, sleeping pills, and again there are some other drugs that are classed as depressants. And essentially what they do is they have a sedative effect, so people think they help you get to sleep. So a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'll have a glass of wine before bed because it helps me get to sleep, and it might well do, but what it does is it disrupts your natural sleep architecture. So what that means is the quality of sleep that you're having is not as good. You might not be able to get as much deep sleep because the depressant that you've taken has affected that sleep quality. You also will find, especially with alcohol, is you're more likely to have to wake up to go to the toilet because they are a diuretic. So that as well can have an impact on your ability to sleep well. So if you're taking any of these things and they are affecting your sleep quality, and then you're also saying, well, I was going to quit smoking and I was going to start eating better and I'm going to get healthier and do more exercise, actually, they could be one of the things that's causing your motivation to be affected because you're not able to get that sleep in order to be able to carry on with those. So the last one we were going to look at was perform better at work. So I suppose this is generally about our ability to function during the day. So for a lot of people here, you'll be here because you yourselves are wanting to improve your sleep, and some of you will also be here because you want to support other people to improve their sleep. And generally performance during the day is such a key indicator of whether or not somebody is sleeping well. You can often tell quite quickly if somebody hasn't slept very well. So our working aged adults need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night. It's worth noting we're all different. So whereas I might need 8 hours, you might only need 7, somebody else might need 9. Generally people who need 9, it's maybe younger adults, kind of around sort of up to 25 years old. But everybody's a little bit different, so it's worth knowing you yourself how much time you would need to sleep. And again, you'd be thinking about, well, when I don't have to get up, how long do I sleep? If my alarm didn't wake me up, when would I naturally wake up? 35% of UK adults sleep less than 7 hours. So when you sleep less than 6 hours, it starts to have serious repercussions on your mental and physical well-being. I know there's a popular thing about, oh, you know, so-and-so used to only sleep 4 hours a night. Maggie Thatcher was a big one. Maggie Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, oh, they only used to sleep 4 hours a night. It's not good for you. It's not good for your mental well-being. It's not good for your physical well-being. We want to be sleeping ideally 7+, but at least 6 hours a night. Half of Britain say they don't get enough sleep. So half the people here will think they don't get enough sleep. And if you think as well about the people you're working with, if there's any additional support needs, any neurodiversity, that percentage will be even higher of people that don't get enough sleep. And sleep-related issues cost employers approximately £1,200 per employee annually, which actually, if you put it together, that's quite a lot. And that can be because of absence because of sleep issues, that can be because of having accidents, a whole host of things that can lead to that. So what is the impact of poor sleep when we're thinking about work? If you're not sleeping well, it can impair your performance. You're not able to perform at your best. You will find that you're more likely to make mistakes. Making decisions, you need to be your kind of focus, and you also need to be at peak cognitive performance. And when you're sleep deprived, it's very, very difficult to make accurate decisions quickly. You're more likely to make mistakes. This can lead to your reputation be affected within your organization. It could cause bigger issues if the decision you're making actually has an impact on other people. It can impair your concentration, which also partly in work, but if you think as well, you know, sleepy drivers are actually quite dangerous on the road because of their impaired concentration levels. So you need to think about, well, if I was driving to work and I've only had 4 hours sleep, are you actually able to do that safely and know that you wouldn't necessarily get into an accident? Sleepy drivers are actually more dangerous than drunk drivers, because often when people have a micro sleep because they're so tired, their reactions disappear completely. Whereas with somebody who's had a drink, it will be slowed down, but it will actually be there. So it's really, really important to think about this. If you or somebody you're working with uses machinery as part of their job, any sort of work-based appliances where actually there could be an accident from losing concentration because they're so tired. People are more likely to be absent from work. Obviously, if you're really, really tired, you're more likely to get sick, and then you're more likely to have to take time off work. And actually longer term, older people do struggle even more so to get a good night's sleep. And there is some research that says that people are more likely to retire early if their sleep issue is chronic and lasts long term, because they just cannot face carrying on with work in the way that they are. There's other aspects to consider, and this might be quite relevant for some of the people you're working with. It can affect our social interactions and relationships. So it can affect your ability to obviously communicate with your colleagues. You might be more irritable with people, and then you might gain a reputation as being quite irritable, or you don't want to ask them because they'll just be in a bad mood with you, or this kind of thing. If you're trying to build relationships, if you're at a new job, or if you're in a new situation, you've got a new team, building those relationships can be a bit more difficult because you're not able to regulate how you necessarily interact with people. You're more likely to be grumpy, short-tempered, you might act impulsively. I was reading a piece of research that says that you're more likely to send grumpy emails when you're sleep deprived. So if you've ever fired off an email in response to something and you felt a bit irritable, and then later on gone, oh, why did I snap like that? That seems so unnecessary. That could be linked to your sleep deprivation. And as I said, more likely to have accidents. So we're thinking about health and safety as well as our general mental and physical well-being. You know, we want to think about how can these things impact on us and how can we get a better sleep. So that's all of the main things that we were talking about from those New Year's resolutions. So I guess the next question is, well, what can we do about it? It's great to know these things. It's great to know that these things affect our sleep, but actually we do want to make things better so that we can sleep better long term. So there's a few things that we need to get to sleep. So your brain and body need signals for what time of day it is. So if you are somebody that tends to skip breakfast and then graze throughout the day, you might find that actually having set meal times helps set your body clock, tell your body, okay, I'm having breakfast, so it's morning, it's time to be awake. And then later on in the evening, when you're having your evening meal, again, that's another signal. We're thinking about light. So during the day, we want it to be light and bright, and at nighttime, we want it to be darker. And that in itself can help set our body clock and tell our brain and body when it's light, I should be awake, and when it's dark, I should be feeling sleepy. A lot of us, I myself am in Scotland, some of you will be in Scotland. In the winter, it's not necessarily easy to get light first thing in the morning. So sometimes you might have to use artificial methods, even just putting the lights on inside. But I know a lot of people use those light boxes. They can be quite helpful, getting that light input in the morning, telling your brain it's time to be awake. And activity is really important. We want to be active during the day. And again, that's a nice signal to your brain. It's daytime, I should be awake. And then we should be calmer in the evening. I should be thinking about sleep. We want to keep a regular routine, and this sets our body clock. We often talk about routines for children. We're really good on saying, oh yes, children need their routines. If you work with people with neurodiversity, often that's a big thing as well. Oh yes, they need the routines, but actually we all need our routines. Our body clocks very much need that regular routine on a daily basis to know, now it's daytime, I should be awake. Now it's nighttime, I should be feeling sleepy. And keep that going so that you feel tired at the right time, you feel awake at the right time. So as I say, daytime should be light and active and engaging, and nighttime should be quiet, calm and relaxing. If you're thinking about exercise, cardio exercise is better during the day. It helps us feel tired later on because we've got rid of some of that energy. But actually cardio is not great just before bed. If you want to do exercise later on in the evening, you're thinking more about your stretches, strength-based exercises. That's why people will often recommend things like yoga closer to bedtime, because it's nice and relaxing. It helps bring our cortisol level down, which is our stress hormone, and helps then tell our brain it's time to release melatonin, I should feel sleepy. So thinking about when you're doing certain things can make a huge difference. You need an hour to prepare for sleep. A lot of people will think that they can get on with their busy day, right, switch everything off, get into bed, and now I can't get to sleep. Why is that? Because actually your brain and body do need to be prepared. You can't just switch off. Some people can just switch off. Usually you can't just switch off. You do need an hour to prepare your body and brain, where you will switch off anything engaging and do something a bit more relaxing. Some people might have a bath, people might read a book, listen to some relaxing music. That might be a time that you do some stretching, might do a little bit of yoga. Spend that hour getting nice and relaxed, ready for bed, into your pajamas, into bed. And that's one of the key things that you can do to get a better night's sleep. But you might also want to think about your ideal routine. Not everybody's the same. We're all a little bit different, and as I said before, our body clock can be slightly different, and that can affect when we might feel hungry, when we might feel most alert, when we feel sleepy during the day. So actually, if you can sit and have a think about, well, when do I tend to have my meals? When do I feel most alert? When do I actually find that I'm more likely to do exercise? I'm more likely to be motivated to do that task that I didn't want to do. Keeping in ideally 30 minutes of daylight if you can in the morning. That might just be light, artificial light, depending on where you are, what time of year it is. Some people will find their cardio might be best in the morning, but what you're looking for is a time when you're most alert, thinking about cardio and thinking about those activities that need concentration. When your most alert time is, that's the time for you. This is kind of like, for me, my timeline, but you can ignore the times, just think about the activity and what it relates to. So we're thinking the time we're most alert, that's when you might want to do your cardio, that's when you might want to do your activities that need concentration. If you've got your post-lunch slump, your cortisol dip in the afternoon. Mine's usually about 2 o'clock. If anyone wants a meeting with me at 2 o'clock, they're not going to get the best out of me. I know that's a fact. Other people will be different. I know one of my colleagues says hers is usually about 4. And that's actually quite a dramatic difference. You know, that's a 2-hour difference in when we feel that. But really what you want to be doing is going for a walk, doing something active. We always say actually after lunch is a terrible time for kids to have maths at school because it requires that focus and that concentration and sitting quietly, when actually they'd be better to do something like PE at that time in the afternoon. You might want to introduce something like yoga, stretching, some kind of strength-based exercise in the evening. And that's when we want to start to feel relaxed so we can start to feel sleepy. And then we have our 1 hour wind down before bed, so that we're ready. Once we get into bed after that hour, we are ready for sleep. Some people, when they are asleep, might wake up during the night. They might find it a little bit difficult to get back to sleep. So something like a distraction technique can really help with getting you back to sleep without staying awake too long. So for some people, it might be mindfulness. Other people find number games or letter games can be helpful. Even counting sheep for some people can work really well. It's a bit of an old wives' tale. Your granny probably told you, oh, just count sheep when you can't get to sleep. But actually it can actually be really helpful because it's repetitive, it's monotonous, and it doesn't involve thinking about too much, and hopefully can stop you getting distracted and then thinking, oh yeah, I must remember to do that tomorrow, because that's one of the worst things for you. So what else do we want to think about? You'll need to give it time. If you or someone you're working with hasn't slept well for a while, changing things for one night will not make a difference. It takes time for our brain to learn habits, and often that's the stumbling block for people, is they'll think, oh well, I did that all last night and I still didn't get to sleep, so it didn't work. It doesn't mean it didn't work, it doesn't mean it won't work, but your brain does need time to learn new things. If you think about the last time you learned any new skill, how long did it take you for it to properly embed? And that's what you kind of have to think. You're probably talking, you know, weeks rather than a day or two for something to really, really settle in. You might find keeping a diary can help. So a sleep diary, thinking about when you went to bed, more or less how long it took you to get to sleep. Obviously, we don't want you to sit clock watching, but if you think, oh yes, it felt like a very long time, or oh, no, it felt quite quickly today. And include things like how you're feeling, because sometimes you might feel like you're not sleeping much more, but actually you notice you feel a bit happier, or you feel like you weren't as grumpy because you've had just that little bit more sleep. You might also find that actually there's something happening during your weeks that's affecting your sleep that you didn't realize was affecting your sleep. Or actually, I did my diary and I realized that I always have a really bad night on a Wednesday, but I have a thing on a Thursday that I hate and I dread every week, but I have to do it. That makes sense. You're feeling a bit anxious about that. What could you do on that Wednesday night to help relieve that anxiety, to avoid you having the bad night's sleep the next night? Preferably you wouldn't lie in bed awake for too long. We don't want to start associating our bed with somewhere we don't sleep, and that can happen if we lie in bed too long. So the best thing to do really is to get up, maybe walk around, have a look about and see if there's something you can do that's doesn't involve maybe going on your phone, because that can turn into quite a long distraction, and also there's a lot of input there which will actually generate cortisol and keep you awake. Could you read a chapter of a book sitting in a chair that's not in your bed? Come back, try again in 10 minutes, and see if the temperature change and just the break from lying in the bed sends that signal to the brain. All right, no, I should try and go back to sleep now. And if you've got any medication that's causing sleep issues, I'm not going to discuss that particularly. I'm not a medical professional, but just speak to your doctor if you think that your medication is causing sleep issues, because a lot of medications can. And also it's worth just being aware that sometimes it can be changed, but sometimes the issues that the medication is causing is not as bad as what the medication is designed to do. So it might be just something that you have to try and make the best of. So it's worth just being aware of that. So some of you will be here because you've already done some sleep training with us, but some of you, it will be new. So I just want to very quickly, before we go to questions, Please do pop any questions you've got in the chat, and we'll have a bit of time at the end to talk through that. But if you would like to learn more, for those of you working with typically developing children and young people, we have a sleep awareness training course where you'll be introduced to a little bit more detail about sleep and how it works, and supporting people to be able to put in sleep plan for typically developing children. This is mostly virtually, but we can also, if there's a group of you, we can come to you and do this in person. This involves some interactive sessions, practical case studies, and a bit of online testing, a bit of reading in between the days. Our sleep counselling training is like our flagship course. So this is a very in-depth training course for those working with children or adults with additional support needs. So we recently have released an adult version of our sleep counsellor training course. So it isn't just for people working with children and young people. But again, we'll be looking at sleep and how it works, but specifically with those with additional support needs. So neurodiversity, physical impairments, sensory impairments. There's a whole range of areas that we cover. And then the idea for that is that we set you up to be able to run a sleep clinic in your local area for people with additional support needs and help them get a better sleep. If you yourself have been struggling, or maybe you work with a team and they've been struggling, we recently have released our Sleep Friendly Employer, which is an accreditation program and is very much about a little bit of training for all the staff to help improve their own health and well-being through improved sleep, and then they can make changes. But we also have workshops for some sleep champions, so then there's a little bit of support for the whole team. This is very recent, so here's a few comments from people who are involved in our pilot, if you've not heard of this before.